listening to The Jake Asman Show on the SportsMap Radio Network.
Presented by Rocket Mortgage.
Live from the O'Reilly Auto Parts Studios, here's Jake Asman.
Welcome back in to The Jake Asman Show here on a Monday morning. Let's get the latest on the NFL and get the latest on the Deshaun Watson situation with someone that is plugged in and understands what's happening in regards to that situation and much more. We go out to the Progressive guest line right now. We bring on a good friend of the show, Thompson, who covers the Houston Texans and covers the NFL for Sports Illustrated. He joins us right now here on the show. Cole, appreciate the time, my friend. Thanks for coming on as always.
Anytime. I'm excited to be talking with you. We're about a week away from the official start of the 2021 NFL season, and that means that there's going to be a lot to cover, a lot to discuss, and more than that, a lot of questions that will be answered.
The big story, of course, right here in Houston, and really this story impacts so many other teams, is the latest with Deshaun Watson. Where are we at right now with Deshaun, and what do you expect to happen in the coming weeks?
So again, from according to people that I've spoken to, there's a current court date that's going to be set sometime in February of 2022. Now, with this court date, this now allows the NFL to decide, will Deshaun Watson be able to play in 2021? Because again, the biggest thing with this story is these are civil cases. These are not court cases that could be deciphered underneath the NFL personal conduct policy to a certain extent. And also that means that they could not put him on the commissioner's exempt list. Now, why is this important? Because if he's put on the commissioner's exempt list, the Texans are likely going to have to pay Deshaun Watson because of the NFL will be stepping in. However, if he isn't put on the commissioner's exempt list, this now allows teams to start dying in and bidding on Deshaun Watson's value. Now, again, could the NFL still suspend Deshaun Watson? Absolutely. They can suspend a player for anything. But if he is not suspended or he is not put on the exempt list by June 1st or after June 1st, this now allows teams to start coming together and figuring out asking prices. And with Watson's status right now still in limbo, they could be getting a very cheap, low, affordable price for a 25-year-old quarterback who's coming off of his best season. It's really going to be important to see how this now court date, whenever it does happen in February, will dictate if Deshaun will be playing in 2021 or not.
Cole, if Deshaun Watson shows up and says, I want to play, do the Texans let him play? Does the NFL then step in? How would that go in your mind?
The NFL will have to step in at that point, and they'll have to sit down with Deshaun Watson and the Texans to decide what will be the case. Now, again, Deshaun would have to then be willing to accept the fact that he would be in competition, potentially having a suspension from the NFL, and also would have to then regain the starting job over the quarterbacks on campus. Now, remember that, keep in mind that Deshaun is now one of 5 quarterbacks in that quarterback room, with the additions of Davis Mills and Jeff Driscoll, who was signed earlier this past week. So having that competition likely means that they are preparing for life without Deshaun Watson in Houston. But more than that, they're also adding in another veteran to bring in that leadership style to teach Davis Mills, who they used the 67th overall pick, their first pick in the 2021 draft, to select. Now, this is going to be the biggest thing of all. Is Deshaun Watson willing to come back and play? Play based off of Casario's terms. Play based off of David Culley's terms. Is he willing to meet them in the middle? And if he's not, Houston again can then say, listen, we don't know what your situation is, but just it'd be probably best for you not to come around. It's all going to be now based off of Watson and his camp. If he is not suspended, if he is not put on the commissioner's exempt list, this will now be on Watson. Watson will be playing by the Texans' rules. And based off everything we've heard from the Texans, they could be willing to move off of Watson just because of his case right now.
Cole Thompson from Sports Illustrated with us right here on the Jake Asman Show. So, Cole, Sports Illustrated, the outlet, of course, that you work for, released another story about Deshaun Watson on Friday. What were some of the big takeaways from the reporting about the allegations against Deshaun Watson?
I think the biggest one of all was the first court case that was made against Watson that was filed by Ashley Solis, the plaintiff who came out and spoke to Tony Busby about filing a court case, was well before. It was in December of 2020, well before Watson asked for a trade from the Texans. Why is this important? Because we've been going back and forth for months now talking about what would be the case. Are the Texans behind this? Is there some way that the Texans are involved in the situation? This is a clear indication. No, they are not. The decision for Watson to ask for a trade came from his personal belief with the organization, with the ownership, led by Cal McNair, led by Jack Easterby, led by the hirings of Nick Caserio and David Culley. This had nothing to do with him getting out of Houston because of a court case. I think that's very important because a lot of people are trying to pin the Texans somehow into this. This all but proves that Houston was not involved in any way, shape, or form, and that these court cases were going to be filed against Watson well before the hiring of Caserio, well before the hiring of Culley, and well into the 2021 season. That is a big, big story when you think about it because, again, the status of Watson and why he wasn't happy with the Texans, despite signing a 4-year, $156 million extension in September. It just shows how fast that relationship was soured from the time that he signed the extension underneath the former regime to February when he was officially announcing, I would like it to be traded.
Cole, do you see any team trading for Deshaun Watson right now if the 22 civil lawsuits are still ongoing?
I don't. I really don't. I don't know because, again, the NFL would then have to come in and be suspended. If he has anything where this does not lead to settlements, this could lead to, multiple cases outside of the court realm. So I do not think that Deshaun Watson will be playing in 2021. I do not know if Deshaun Watson will be playing in 2022. But until his name is cleared and he 100% can be active for 100% of games, or he can be active for however many games minus the suspension he has, then I believe there will be a trade. Now, of course, the team that I would be looking at would be the Philadelphia Eagles. They have 2 first-round picks, potentially a third first-round pick. If that's the asking price for Watson, if you think you could win with this team and Watson will not be suspended, by all means, go ahead and get out there, sign that extension, and get him in the building. But if you don't know anything and you don't have any clue on if Deshaun Watson is going to be suspended, if he's going to be able to play, you cannot make that trade. You are a rebuilding franchise that has plenty of holes on both sides of the ball, and those 3 first-round picks could be worth a ton of draft capital, very similar to what we saw with the New York Jets this past year going into 2022.
Cole Thompson, Sports Illustrated NFL writer, with us here on the latest with Deshaun Watson. I mean, for a possible suspension, Cole, is there anything you can compare this to as far as how many games Deshaun could be looking at here? What does your gut tell you when it's all said and done, if there even is a suspension, and if there is a suspension, for how many games?
I mean, the suspension is weird because, again, the only thing that we've ever seen of this civil lawsuit state was the Ezekiel Elliott one back in 2017 when he had 1 charge against him, and he missed 6 games. We're at 22 charges with 23 total. 1 was dropped because of the woman did not want her name to be exposed during the court hearings where the Harris County judge came out and said Tony Busby and his law firm must release all names instead of going under the Jane Doe pseudonym. So I don't really know what the suspension would be. I mean, if I'm looking at this just based off of 6 for 1, we're talking a full season. I mean, we're talking a straight up full season with further actions, which is why I do believe that if the NFL were to step in, they would be putting him on the commissioner's exempt list, which we've never seen before because of a civil case. But at the same time, we're at a level of we don't know what this type of suspension would be. Now, minimally, I would say Deshaun Watson would get 8 games. He would 100% miss half the season. But again, it's one of those things where can you suspend him if it is a civil case? Can you keep him out of the league? Can you put him on the commissioner's exempt list? These are all questions that have never really been answered in the NFL, and they're about to be answered on June 1st.
All right, let's move on from Watson, Cole. Let's talk about the Julio Jones situation. Do you think Julio Jones is a Falcon week 1 of the 2021 season?
I think it's going to be based off of, what the asking price is. Now, according to Albert Breer, the Monday morning quarterback, Terry Fontenot would like a first-round pick in return for Julio Jones. Now, why is this important? Because before last season, Julio Jones had 6 straight 1,000-yard-plus seasons of over 70 catches, and on top of all of that, he only missed 4 starts. That is worth a first-round pick when you break it down. But you also have to keep in mind what is the asking price and what will be the salary cap structure over the next 2 years. Jones has owned $15.3 million in 2021, and I think it's over $20 million in 2022. So again, a team that would be willing to part with that would also be taking on a massive salary cap hit. Who are some teams that could definitely do that? The New England Patriots are definitely one of those teams to watch for. The San Francisco 49ers are another team to watch for. But the one thing that I think would be really interesting that nobody is mentioning would be the Los Angeles Chargers. Keep in mind that Los Angeles is not paying their top quarterbacks. And they also have the money to afford to bring in another wide receiver along with this rebuilt offensive line with Rashawn Slater, Matt Filer, Corey Linsley. And Justin Herbert is looking to expand his horizons and continue to be the next big-time quarterback after last season winning the Offensive Rookie of the Year. They would make a lot of sense. Ultimately, if a team does trade for him for a first-round pick, Bill Belichick makes a lot of sense. We know that he is willing to part ways with first-round picks. They have a first-round pick. They're trying to win now. The connection between Cam Newton and Jones is very prevalent during their times in the NFC South. So I believe that if there's one team that will offer a first-round pick, you got to go with New England. But I wouldn't be shocked if Los Angeles, for the right price of actual draft capital, would be willing to go ahead and bring in Julio Jones. Again, the AFC West is very tight-knit to being one of the best divisions in the NFL. Adding Jones would make it so much better.
Why would the Falcons trade him? Honestly, like if they could keep him, you have Matt Ryan, you drafted Kyle Pitts. Your division, other than Tampa, is not that good. Breeze is gone from the Saints, of course. We don't know what Darnold and the Panthers are. Why trade Julio Jones after you took a tight end 4th overall? Try and win the NFC South, or at least try and make the playoffs when your quarterback is still playing at a high level in Matt Ryan. Yeah,
I think the biggest thing of all is the salary cap structure. They are one of 3 teams that enter June 1st under $1 million in salary cap. The other 2 are the Chicago Bears, which will be up over that when Charles Leno's contract is terminated on June 1st, worth up to $9.8 million, and the New Orleans Saints. So they're sitting right now at just over $400,000 in salary cap, and 3 players in Deion Jones, the linebacker, Jake Matthews, the offensive tackle, Ryan, and Julio Jones would take up over $68.4 million in salary cap hit alone. That is why you were trying to move off Jones, because if you were to trade him or release him, it would free up over $15.3 million this year, and it would allow you to also expand on that salary cap next year when you have to pay him $17.3 million. So add all that together, that's over $27 million in salary cap structure to where you could free up, bring in some younger players, maybe bring in some prove-it players and help this rebuild really thrive. But again, the asking price has to be a first-round pick. If you're not gonna get anything of that tremendous value in Jones with the number 42 pick, with the number 45 pick. You could with the number 25 pick. You could with the number 28 pick. You could with the top 15 selection on top of you probably being a top 5 team next season. The biggest question mark is, are the Falcons trying to win now offensively and defensively? Did the moves that they made this past offseason with the new head defense coordinator and Dean Pease really work out? If that's the case, by all means do it. If not, I think that you have to keep Jones for another season. You can move off him next year, and at that point, you probably will just accept a second-round pick.
He's Cole Thompson, covers the NFL and the Houston Texans for Sports Illustrated. You can follow him on Twitter at Mr. Cole Thompson, and he joined us on our progressive guest line. Cole, appreciate the time. As always, we'll talk soon, my friend.
See you this week.
Cole Thompson with us there, talking all things Deshaun Watson and everything going on with Julio Jones. We'll take a quick break, wrap up our show for a Monday. Jake Asman with you right here on Sports Map Radio.
Wake up, Cole.